Welcome to More Than a Broker, the podcast that goes beyond the traditional definition of a logistics provider. My name is Andrew Elsener, co-founder of Spot. In each episode, we will dive into the stories of industry experts, keep you up to date on the highs and lows of the logistics marketplace, and introduce you to the people behind the advanced technologies that are driving innovation for brokers, shippers, and carriers within our industry. Join us as we explore the world of logistics through a different lens. This is More Than a Broker.
Drivers, start your engine!
So you grew up in Pennsylvania?
I did. I grew up in Western Pennsylvania. Went to a small school, as I mentioned, Clarion University, and then worked my way through there. And then my first job was at Ross Roy in Detroit, which was a huge agency. So I felt very fortunate to cut my teeth at an agency of that magnitude.
So back then at college, did you have an idea that marketing, advertising was a career path?
Yes. I knew in the 8th grade. I figured it out in 8th grade. I was in a bookstore. And you're young. You don't know what you're going to do. I grew up wanting to be a truck driver. And it's funny, I look back on that now. And even then, I thought I'll own my own trucking company. So even then, it was in my heart to do my own thing. But then I was in a bookstore, and the book, to this day, I remember turning around and I saw a stack of brand new books that just came out. It was Ogilvy on Advertising. And I still have that book.
The one you got that day?
Right here. The one I got from the bookstore. And I open it up and I'm like, what the heck is this? And I'm like, I can do this for a living. And that's what changed it all for me. I bought the book and I made it my goal to work for Ogilvy and meet him, which I did.
How'd you get to meet him?
I was working at the agency and he would come into town. He was really old at that point, and he would come into the agency when he'd have speaking engagements. But we were always told, do not approach Mr. Ogilvy. And I'll never forget, it was a Wednesday night. I was working late as you do in this business. And somebody said, Mr. Ogilvy's in the building. And I still remember like the hair in the back of my neck stood up. Like, I'm meeting this guy. I don't care what anybody says. And found out he was on the creative floor because he was a creative guy. He was a writer. He would go right to the creative floor and he'd just walk into people's offices. And if you were there, great. Most of the creatives were gone. And I remember seeing him walking down the hall. He's wearing gray slacks, a yellow sweater. And I walked up behind him with this book. And I said, Mr. Ogilvy. And he turned around. I was like, yeah, he's British. Yes. And introduced myself. We had a good chat about what we did, blah, blah, blah. And I explained to him what a big influence he was to me and asked him if he would sign that book. And he's like, absolutely. And went in and he signed it. And I have that framed in my office now. That was kind of the coup de grace for me as a youngster in the business to meet that guy.
What was he known for?
He used to be a vacuum cleaner salesman, and he started his own agency, Ogilvy. And it was Ogilvy and Mather at the time, and they're global. They're one of the best. And to this day, I still consider them one of the best agencies. And primarily that's driven, I think, by their culture. They stayed true to everything Ogilvy believed in, all their Ogilvyisms, as he call them. And if you follow them on LinkedIn, they still put up quotes that he's made. And he was a very bold, brash British guy. And what he said was right. And he would take out these full page ads in the New York Times and say, this is what you're doing wrong. And this is what you need to do in advertising. And, pissed a lot of people off because who is this guy? But he was very, very driven, smart, big ego. And he built his agency from nothing into a global powerhouse with thousands and thousands of people.
When you think about marketing back then, can you ever imagine seeing marketing and advertising today versus when you first got into it? I mean, the landscape has had to be so different.
It changes every day now with AI. It's moving even faster, which I think makes our business so exciting. And I get asked the question, you probably do too, like every industry is changing fast, and digital and technology and now AI as part of that equation is making it go even faster, right? So when I started out, I like to use the analogy of our business. Marketing was like a bowling ball where your campaign's the ball and all your customers are the pins, your audience, and you want to make an impact with your brand and great creative, and you roll that sucker down and they, whoa, my gosh, where do I buy this? Now it's like a pinball machine and your customers are the balls, and your job as a marketer is now there's a lot of different paths on their journey to purchase, and your job as a marketer is to find them on that journey, intersect it, and influence them to consider and purchase your product, right? So data and technology allows us to do that. And that's what's so exciting. And I think AI is throwing even more into that equation to make it even more intelligent about how you can influence and target your customers. And it's interesting because back in the day, like we have a whole team of data scientists and data engineers, like way above my pay grade, but we couldn't exist without people of that caliber who know how to do that, right? So it absolutely has changed. And I can't even imagine, I don't care what industry you're in, I can't even imagine what it's going to be like in 5 years, let alone 10, let alone next year. I mean, every day there's a new technology coming out. And I'm talking with creative people in the business. And one guy's a good friend of mine, has his own AI development company. And he used this phrase that never left my brain. He said he stacks the tech because every day it changes. And so he has stacks of technology of how he's pulling down different things to do his job because it's evolving so fast.
Right. I think like the last 10 years, the speed was like maybe once a year you saw something come out that was going to change it. And the things you invested, like you were saying, data scientists, like you invest in data science and that front end, back end developers. And then it feels like in the past 2 years, every 6 months, 3 months, it just changes. And you have to react as a business owner almost quickly because everybody else, the few that make it, got to have it.
Yes. And I'm sure, with your business, like I've always been a big believer in being able to anticipate what those things are that are coming, right? And having not just a 5-year plan, but not just chasing the quarter, but understanding where the industry is going, who you are as a business, what you need to do to adapt, bringing in the right talent to meet those goals. And it's becoming, like you said, it's changing so fast now. Sometimes that's a hard thing to do, but we want to be leading those conversations, right? So, and our team is fantastic and they're empowered to really dive in and lead a discussion on what you need to do to stay ahead of the game.
I thought you wrote something cool on your website. I think it was reward creativity, something to that aspect. And there's a company that we deal with, and their company, they pay people that come forward with ideas. And so like if they're in a manufacturing company, and if you saw like a machine or something you could change in the workflow, they'll pay you extra on the floor. And that's how they engage creativity. So how does a business owner, especially in your sector, drive creativity?
As an industry, we are deemed creative, right? And we have a creative department, but we really embrace collaboration. And we use the statement that creative is not a department. And in our business, we're serving clients. So you have to be thinking about their business. You have to be thinking of unique ways, creative ways to solve a problem or a pain point or a competitor pressure point. So creativity truly can come from anywhere. It's not just the creative advertising. It's also how you implement a program, a different way of using a media or a piece of technology to solve that problem. So I think that's an expectation for us as an industry that you bring that, certainly if you're in the creative department, but we reinforce that all the time. And we have a thing here that I wouldn't say it promotes creativity per se, but we have a bonus lead program. Have you heard of this, Andrew? Where we give people G-Bucks and they can give up to $50, actually up to $100, but most people give $5, $20. And it's an internal channel where people can say, hey, thanks, Bill. What a great job helping pull together that PowerPoint presentation last night at midnight. Or what a great presentation that you did, Neil, for a client. You brought new ways of thinking that they've never even seen before. That was a recent one. So that reward of acknowledging people for contributing and thinking of different ways and bringing creative ideas to address business problems, that's probably the closest one-on-one we have when you talk about a reward or an incentive. And then they can cash those G-Bucks in for restaurant gift cards or whatever.
So is the G like a gratitude?
Gatesman.
Okay.
But yeah, it's gratitude. Yeah. Somebody came up with a Gatesman G-Bucks, but it is gratitude, right? I like that better than Gatesman, actually gratitude bucks.
So in that instance, it's an internal chat that if somebody in the company does something great, you would say it, and then that idea could spur other ideas.
Yeah. I mean, every day you'll say, big shout out to Jen's team who did XYZ, $50, $20, $10, $10 to the team. And then that pot is refreshed at the end of every month. And they get an allotment per year that they can pull down. And we even have people say, I'm out of G-Bucks, but I just wanted to give a shout out to So I think that is something great. And we also have weekly wrap-ups that started during COVID that just to keep in touch with people, but we've continued them where we get together every Friday and it's a 15-minute call. It's not mandatory. And you can give a shout out before we start talking about operations or business or what's going on. And those sometimes, I'm not kidding you, can go on 10 minutes that people just continue. Like I want to give a shout out to Sid, who did a great job covering an event over the weekend with a client. And those are great because I think that also builds and rewards creativity and people who have contributed in that regard.
I love that. We started years ago. I started what's called the why. So it's why at Spot Inc. And you can send in a why from a customer so you get a compliment, or you can send a why about a coworker. And it's neat to publish them and see them. And then the winner gets a why trophy at the end of the year. And it's been neat because a lot of times customers don't compliment, they only complain. And even internally, like what feels good to actually be recognized. I'm always curious about, so you knew you wanted to start a business. And then in 2006, you opened up, right? On your own?
Yes.
What was the time where you was like, all right, I'm doing this? What drove that? And then to follow that up, was there anybody that you talked to kind of figure out, all right, how am I going to do this? Or was it, I'm going to go at this at myself? And because I always love hearing a founder when they start, like what was the thing that did it? And then is there any guidance from anybody that you respect or said, here's things you should do?
What drove me to do it was being on the client side in account management. You always have the business mindset of running a client's business. So, and I always tell people, pretend your name's on the door. No matter what you do, it's up to you to make it work. And I've always been really, really good at growing clients' business. It's just an innate thing with me. I've always thought, what do we need to do to make things work and based on competition or the market or whatever. And I've done that really well over the years. And I got tired of doing it for people who owned the company. And it got to the point where I felt, there's a gentleman in town, his name was Frank Marmion, and he was an old Irish guy. And Frank would always build his company up to 10 people, and it was back down to him. And he was kind of a brash guy, smoked a cigar. I always respected him, admire him. I interviewed with him when I was in college for an internship, and that's where we made that connection. And Frank would always say, Gatesman, come work with me. And Frank, I'm not now. I'll pay you a base plus commission. Like, Frank, I'm good. But he always seemed to be calling me right after I'd make a jump. I remember right after I started Ogilvy, I got a phone call from him. I'm good, Frank. But I was at the point in my career where I said, you know what? If I'm going to do this, I was 39 years old. I believe in myself, and I'm the type of guy, like when I reach the island, I'm burning the boats. I'm all in. I'm not going back. And I had a great reputation, especially in Pittsburgh, and a lot of client contacts a lot of them are friends now. And I knew that I could make this work. So I was betting on myself. And I knew with Frank's experience, and he was kind of creative business guy, jack of all trades. And there's another creative guy that we had on board as well. And I'm like, I can make this work. I can do this. And literally right after we opened our doors, we were a no-name agency. Nobody knew who we were, Gatesman, Marmion. And we pitched this account called Shop and Save as a regional grocery store chain, like 80 stores. And we were up against some big shops, and we won. And we're still a client of ours to this day, 19 years later. And that kind of put us on the map. And like everything I've done in my past, I just built and grew. And my previous agency, I ran 85% of the business. I just grew my accounts. One brand, Swedish Match, we started out with one brand, and we ended up with the entire portfolio of like 35 brands. So just having that mentality of, looking forward and using that as our base, and we just grew that way. And as you know, it comes down to the people. You can't do it all yourself. So it's making sure that you can find the right talent and then get out of the way and let them do their thing. And it's such a key to success. So I would say that from answering your question, that's a long way around the barn. There wasn't a specific trigger, but knowing Frank, knowing I kind of had that partner that I knew and trusted, and knowing my own abilities and growing an account, I know I could do it. And I give credit to my wife as well, because she got tired of me bitching all the time about things I would do. And she said, just go. And that also was a good motivator for me to like, let's make this work.
I'll never forget our first day was I left the house at like 3:30 in the morning, drove downtown. It was January 8th. It was probably 10 degrees out. And I got out of my car, jumped, and landed on a piece of ice and hit my head, landing on the ground, staring at the stars. Like, oh shit, what did I just do? Day one, I'm soaking water. But I went into an office where the heat was steamy. It didn't really work. It was steam-fed heating system. And there was no coffee machine, and I had a little dorm room fridge, and I was on card tables. What did your day one look like?
Those are the days. I remember our office was so small. the bathroom, it was a men's and a woman's bathroom, and the kitchen literally was like shared a wall. And I same with you. It's like, what did I do? Like, I had the car, I had the bonus, the everything. The travel is all wonderful, and then there's days like, what the heck did I do? But that's what cuts you as a leader in learning that, right? And it makes you appreciate more what you've built once you do that. You just have to persevere and never give up.
Did you write a business plan for the business in 2006 when you were planning it out?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yes. We knew what markets we wanted to go after. We knew what's the reality of a business hiring us as a small no name, right? So we had to really rely on the cred we had as people, what we brought, our backgrounds. And, you find your niche. I would love to know your thoughts on this, but we still have that same DNA coming from that hard work mentality, scrappy, nimble, never give up, competitive, like that. We've stayed true to that mindset. And to me, it's like the paranoid survive, right? You got to wake up every day as an entrepreneur, and you have to have that hunger. You have to have that desperation of, holy shit, you got to go and take nothing for granted, because not just in our business, and I try to preach this to our staff as well, for every client we have, there's probably 10 agencies going after them. And same with them. When we do planning for our clients, think of all the competition that wants to eat them for lunch. Like, it's our job to protect them and help crush their competition, right? So the world's becoming even more competitive now, and the speed of business makes it even more so. So I'll never forget, I was in one of my clients' offices, and he had a stack of creative things in his corner. I'm like, what the heck is that, Rich? He's like, oh my God, I get that stuff every week from agencies that, trying to take our account away from us. A reinforcement. And when I worked on the client side, I saw the same thing. I got the same stuff, right? So you always got to be on your game every day. No matter what industry you're in, you have to be on your game, and you have to have that desperation to win and never give up and just keep going.
I've always thought the bigger companies get to a point and they get comfortable. And when we came up early, I always said we were resourceful, didn't have resources. But somebody asked, like, how did you go bat against companies that actually had departments? Because I remember back, like, our phone, we had, I think, 9 extensions. So if you needed HR, press 3, it would ring to me and my partner. And one of our first customers always used to laugh. He's like, I'm going to hit 7 today. And sure enough, you answer. But like, it was always that addicted and obsessed with the customer, because we didn't have, other than caring about the customer, we had nothing. And so I couldn't win on presentations. One of our first meetings was on January 20th, 2009 in Chicago. It was a snowy day, inauguration day. And we made a trifold. And I remember, like, when we got to the meeting and the person said to us, like, no. And I was going to hand him this trifold to leave. I'm like, I'll just throw this thing away. But it was terrible. Like, looking back today, you focus on the customer. It's pretty easy. So when you start, are you guys just 3 of you?
There were 3 of us, yes.
So were you out just cold calling, pounding phones, or was it more strategic? Like, hey, I knew these people, I could go out and they knew me.
It was both. I would say, especially in our industry, if I was to take an average of the business we win, it comes through people that we know or we've worked with before. We have one client has taken me with her 3 different times with accounts. And that's the most wonderful business to win, is they know you've been tested, you've been put through the grinder. They know you can perform. So yes, absolutely. In advertising and marketing, if you've got somebody in the room that knows you or knows somebody that knows you, that's the quickest way to win. That said, as we've grown, just based on our expertise in different industries, whether it's B2B or higher ed or healthcare or finance, whatever, having the reputation in those industries as well can get you into a pitch, but it's a much harder haul to win that, because sometimes they have somebody in the room, their competitors have somebody in the room, and they know all along they're going to pick them, but they have to go through the process to show that they went through the steps to pick the agency they really wanted. So that can be a challenge, and we've won both ways, but obviously relationships are the best. That's how we've grown the fastest.
I was looking at your website, and I love how you have your vision. Like, there's a picture of it on the wall, and you talk about people. And how have you changed in entrepreneurship, like for me, I feel like when we first started, we sucked at the people side. We were so busy and so focused. Like we never sat down and said, like, let's really think about this. Even though we said it was one of our pillars, it was great people. We're much different today. How have you guys changed from that year one, year two, when you started hiring into today?
Well, I think the dynamic of the generations have changed, which obviously impacts who you look for, how you hire. I do think that how we've changed is we have a director of HR who's really, really good, and she knows our culture. So if we put out a job posting, she'll vet, and even though they got the skills on paper, she'll do pre-interviews and kind of get the top before then she takes it to the second stage. And I wouldn't say we go overboard because we do make decisions fast, but it's truly understanding the type of person, not just a skill set that fits our culture. And we've made some missteps in the past where we brought somebody in who's the shiny toy and he's going to do this and the other. And it just wasn't a fit culture wise. And I think we've changed in the sense that we know who we are now. Like we know we have a pretty good feel. It's more of an art than a science, I think, of who's a fit. And when we bring somebody in, especially at a higher level, we make sure that multiple directors talk with them. We make sure that people on the team they're working with talk with them. And we'll know pretty quickly if that person is a fit or not a fit. And usually the gate to move them forward is pretty tight at the front that we know that we're not wasting too much time talking to a bunch of people that just aren't going to fit from a culture standpoint. So I think first and foremost is finding those people that have that passion, that hunger to win, that have the entrepreneurial spirit, that understand that when they come here, they're going to run. There's nobody holding their hand. And we run lean and fast and nimble. And it's not a sweatshop by any means, but it's that mindset of wanting to win and compete. That probably first and foremost is who we look for. So that really hasn't changed. So that's an interesting question you ask. How have we changed? I will say that I don't know if it's total reality, but with Gen Z and they don't want to work and those types of things, I don't think that's necessarily true. I don't. I think they're more open and vocal about things they may not be happy with. But I think if you talk to people, you can get to the core of who they are. You'll find the people you need to be successful. Now, our industry is much different than yours. I mean, you're a much, much larger company. So I'm sure that becomes much more difficult to find those people. And you probably have a bigger variety of positions than we do, right? So I would guess that's a bigger challenge to find that, right? So we're much smaller, so it's maybe not as difficult.
I do love that generation's curiosity. It's more, I think it's fair and valid to question. I actually appreciate that. And I also appreciate when they get behind something, they know how to create a movement and or will buy into a movement versus just, back in the day, this is your job, do it. Now it's like, well, why are we doing this? And so it actually makes you better as a leader. This is why we're doing it. And this is the direction we want you as part of this.
You probably have experienced this. It's sometimes you forget that they don't know you, right? I mean, you have people who have been here for years and they get who we are. And sometimes you have to remind and remotivate and understand, like, where are you going as a company and how do you fit into that puzzle? Because we're all in this together. And especially a smaller company, you got to make sure that there's not that piece of sand in the gears. You got to make sure that it's all running smoothly.
How do you define entrepreneurship? Because you talk about it in the company and you talk about passion and grit and empathy. But how do you see entrepreneurship? How do you define it?
To me, it's having the mindset of, if it's to be, it's up to me. That's one of my quotes. And to me, it's responsibility. It's being accountable. And entrepreneurship, at the core of everything, it's having a passion to get up and have that desire to win. And that can come in many, many different forms. Like, you don't have to be like, oh, I want to have my own business, but it's being a self-starter, being able to motivate yourself, understanding that you're part of a bigger thing. But at the end of the day, it falls on your shoulders, right? And you have to support others as well. And I always I mentioned this earlier, like my directors, I reinforce, like, pretend your name's on the door. What would you do? Don't come ask me, what would you do in your discipline? What would you recommend? And I guess that's probably the easiest way I would define it, is the accountability, responsibility, being able to pull up your bootstraps and make it happen, regardless of your position or department or what you do in life. Even if I'm trying to think about just a regular job, it's like, just be the best you can be.
I always think of it as people ask, like, they think of entrepreneurship as owning a business. I mean, you just mentioned it. It's really not. It's owning or fixing a process. it's that constant addiction to the customer's needs. And I think like how do you improve something? And whether you have resources or not, people that are resourceful will fix problems. And I can remember the early days, we would compete against $20 billion companies for large contracts. And I can remember sitting in a conference room till like 3 a.m, coming up with these different, using math and data. We won this big contract, and I'll never forget sitting on the plane on the way home, and the salesman that was there looked at me and they called me Ace, and they said, Ace, that's great, we won, but how are we going to do this? I'm like, we'll figure it out when we get home. Like, so how does the company look today versus if you go back to 2006, what's it look like today?
We're definitely more multifaceted, where more people wear many more hats, where now we have distinct departments with very smart people running their discipline. So that has changed. We've gotten better at integration, where a lot of agencies will claim, oh, we do it all, we're full service, and they're in silos. And we don't have silos. We operate with one profit center, which is very unique.
So meaning in like other competitors, they may be different groups within the organization that have an own P&L or...
100%, yes. Even smaller agencies, the smaller ones don't tend to have the level of talent we've got for our size, right? They say they can do it, but truly, like, we're ranked one of the top 100 PR firms in the country. We just got named that again a couple months ago. For an agency of like 60 some people, we're competing with the people of like Gray and Publicis. I mean, we're in that conversation. So other agencies say they do PR, but they can't touch us. Same with data analytics. We've got an incredible, brilliant person running that department. Same with creative. It's having people that are truly experts at their craft. That is probably different, much different than where we used to be. And we truly are consultants to our clients. Not that we weren't before, but it was me and Frank and a cigar. You know, it's just changed. And I think what's changed the most is now we're the hunted. People want to work for us because we've got such a great reputation. People love the vibe we've got. And it's harder outside of Pittsburgh, even though we have national accounts. We have very few accounts in Pittsburgh. But when we hire, we try to keep people within, we like to say, if you can at least get into the office, Chicago or Pittsburgh, for a meeting within an hour or two. We do have people in other states, but the culture is what really drives and what I think has made that attractive. And what has changed the most is really defining who we are. That's the biggest thing, in having the talent at the levels that we do to be the consultants to our business. That's probably the most, I feel like we built this Lamborghini and we just make sure we're getting it right on paved roads. Like, I love that story of you winning that account against the firm. I love that. It's like, put us in. We just won an account last fall against, there were 7 and it narrowed it down to 5, then down to 3. It was us and 2 huge global agencies out in New York City, and we won. And there's no better feeling, right? Guarantee you those 2 agencies, like, who the fuck is Gatesman?
I mean, people were asking, like, who are these people? And I used to always say, like, and I still do, like, I always say, move quiet with focused energy and we'll grow this story together. And like back in the day, like, I was the marketing guy. And so pretty terrible posts and kind of like seeing the evolution of the company. But I'll never forget, like, in our big win, they never asked a question to us of, have you done this before? Because if I did, my reference list was pretty damn small. But the funny thing is, somebody said to me, well, then how did you avoid that? I said, I didn't avoid it. I just asked so many questions about them that they had to talk about them and not about me. And I think that's kind of like the key to growing a startup is, it's not about you. It's about them. Is there anything you would have changed in your journey? So here you are now, 2025, started in 2006. If you had done something different as a owner, a leader, that would have accelerated growth or changed the trajectory of the company faster?
Things I've done, I would undo. That there were certain people I brought into the organization that, and I mentioned this before, they were the shiny toy, or I thought they were not a culture fit. And that was my biggest mistake, and I will never make that mistake again. They just didn't fit with leadership, and it caused a lot of damage. And to undo that, it can be trying. And I really appreciate the directors that worked with me through those changes. The thing with our business, Andrew, is we're all people. We don't make anything. We don't deliver hard goods. It's all people. So personalities and relationships they mean a lot. That's all we have. And there's a saying that our assets go down in the elevators at night, right? So when you bring somebody in that doesn't fit your people, the damage can be significant. And I've gone through some real pain, sleepless nights, knowing that, oh my God, this is not going to work. And that's probably the biggest thing I would have done differently. But you know what? You get off the ground, you brush yourself off, and you keep going, and you just don't give up. And I'll share a stat with you that you should feel very proud about as well. I don't know where I saw this, but you've heard the stat that like 80% of all new businesses fail within the first year. And then within 5 years, it's like 90%.
4%.
Yeah, whatever that stat is, I'm like, holy shit, here we are. We're going to be celebrating our 20th year next year in one of the most incredibly competitive, tough businesses there is. And we're still here. I'm still here. So it's like, what have I done? Something different? Maybe that helped us think differently to this, right? As you know, it's like a jungle gym. It's not a linear path to the top. And as long as we continue to get better, and our goal is not to become the biggest agency, our goal is to be the best agency we can be. And to do that, you just got to keep ebbing, weaving, thinking, anticipating, making sure you trust your people. You've got the right people to trust, and then get out of the way and let them do their thing. So the fact that we're here and we're surviving and you're having the success you are, and the same on our end, it's really humbling to think, what have I done something different? That's a great question. I don't know if I would have. Probably a couple of those people I brought in, I would have not.
Right. Which is hard because we bootstrapped everything, and hiring, we were so tired. I'll never forget when we needed to expand. I mean, we were working 7 days a week, and freight is 24/7. It's truly 24/7. And I remember because I had 4 kids at the time, and I missed everything. I mean, everything. And so, right, we need to hire people. And there was a person that walked in, and I hired him on the spot. And I remember about 2 weeks in, like, oh man, this is terrible. It's like, it's my fault. I put them in this position and they weren't ready, but like, we didn't think out that hiring process. We were just more hiring because we were tired.
That's exactly what happened with this one partner. Like, I wouldn't call it desperate, but we were running on fumes and we needed a leader in this department. And I knew his reputation. We were small. It's like, let's go. And in hindsight, yeah, if you would have been able to think through that a little bit more, because I'm a very decisive person, I move really fast, sometimes not for my own good. But in that situation, when you're dealing with people, that is certainly something you really got to get right, especially when it comes to your culture.
I think for too, like in the entrepreneurship, especially in a startup, I always liken it to sailing. I'm like, get the boat in the water first. Like that way we can decide which way to fix things, make new iterations of the product, but then learn how to sail. Like generally we're in, but then feel the pain of the customer or the employee or the vendor, and then make the change to sail better versus waiting.
I love that analogy, right? Because you kind of got your effort going. Now we can crap which way we want to take it.
Well, because you see it sometimes like in big companies, like the decision making is so slow. So you can be about 60, 70% right, but then let's just fix the product. And we started developing our own tech years ago, and my partner's really good at this. Like, let's just get the product out, and then we'll just change it. But at least let's see what works and what doesn't. Sometimes the analysis causes paralysis. How do you spend your time today? You've come from I'm selling, I'm running, to what do you do today, day to day?
Day to day right now, I'm pretty much new business operations. So I've got a great team here that they keep the boat afloat. And I would say I'm more like, okay, let's steer this way, anticipating there might be icebergs coming up here. I'm still involved with clients from a macro perspective. I still take pride in that. That's part of who I am. I want to make sure that their business is on track. So I don't get in the weeds. I let people run their show. But at the end of the day, I am involved with client planning meetings, big events, things of that nature. So I just like to make sure that I'm the steward of the relationship, making sure that we're delivering for our clients, so we don't lose that aggressiveness, that care, that passion that I talk about. Like, we have to keep that going. So that's pretty much my role, is more operations, new business, and client relationships versus more the doing.
How was it when you started getting bigger? Because you made a couple acquisitions, right?
Yes.
And then way more people than day one. Customer list looks way different. Did you ever become a choke point to the operation, meaning everybody was coming to you for stuff? There were so many things getting funneled to you, and you only had so much time to make decisions. Or were you able to let go? Because I think like there's this time in like a startup, like everything, every customer, every process. You created the process, and then at some point, like I felt like I was just this giant like bottleneck, and I got to get the heck out of the way.
Yes. Two-part answer to that. When we first made the acquisition, for the agency in Chicago, there was a miss on culture there. And that was very difficult. So I wouldn't say I was a choke point, but I had to be very involved in guiding us through that ocean of icebergs. I keep thinking about your sailboat. That was very difficult and very challenging. So yes, I was involved. I wouldn't call it a chokehold, but knowing when we made that acquisition, the importance of making sure the staff that were on board weren't impacted by those that weren't. So that was a challenge. I wouldn't say I'm a chokehold now because I'm very much a let people do their thing and I stay out of the way, but don't think I'm not watching. I very much in tune with what's going on, more so than people probably realize. And I think that's a good sense of how I grew up. And I talk about empathy and seeing other people's perspectives on things. And you can never lose that with clients. And you can never stop asking what if and thinking about the risks. So you have to have leadership being that canary in the coal mine, if you will, like being able to ascertain those things. So while I'm not involved in the day-to-day, I do understand from a client relationship standpoint, business standpoint, where things are going. I stay on top of the industries we're involved with and knowing what's happening, continuing to challenge our directors to making sure that have we thought about this or we thought about that. But yeah, I try to talk about the sailboat. I'm the guy that kind of nudges the boat this way or this way, but making sure that we're going straight.
Thinking about like your growth story and even our growth story. We talked earlier about like that customer addiction, the empathy, the passion, like to be addicted to these people. But as the technology changes and as you look to the future, how do you as a leader draw this plan and saying, this is the direction we're going to go? What guides you in a direction for either a new product? I think you guys have something like hacking human behavior. I saw on your website. And you talked earlier about the bowling ball used to be the brand and now the person is the brand and you know, it's the opposite. So how do you as a leader set how we implement tech, the direction that we're going to go, and then getting the team to drive that forward? Is there any technique you use or strategy?
I think a lot of it is driven by customer demand, right? And where things are going. And I think that's the big thing with AI now is a lot of people don't know. There's a lot of uncertainty. And I would equate this with back in the day of the dot-com boom when it was this wide open field running. Everybody was coming up with dot-coms, they're always doing this, but nobody knew, right? I would say it's almost more unsettling now because of technology. AI is like learning on its own. And even the people, like the head of Google didn't even know what was going to happen. So if he doesn't know, how the heck are we going to know? But that said, we have very smart people. And when you talk about technology and data, that's where the changes are happening the most, right? So being able to know what tools we should be implementing for predictive modeling and understanding where to place dollars that make the most sense, using information and technology for research and understanding customers, getting data faster because the speed of business it's moving faster and faster. And we do have, I mentioned our director of analytics. She's also in charge of innovation. So in that capacity with AI, technology, data, she's leading that thought leadership way above my pay grade. So I would say that's probably where we're making that path. But ultimately, we have a plan for the agency in what our goals are for an agency, what industries we want to target as an agency, where there are opportunities to go after and maybe different verticals as an agency. So yeah, we have those as plans and we try to stick to our true north. There may be opportunities that come in that don't fit that model, and we'll take them and win. If it makes sense, if we have a relationship on the other side that we're going for this, that's happened. But in terms of like making those anticipatory predictions, again, that's really in technology is where we're going as a business, and that's going to have the greatest impact.
Because I think even today's age, like that speed you talk about, it just goes so fast. And we had a meeting the other day. It's like, because we're implementing AI in a lot of different places, but you could go 100 directions. And it's really has to go back to that main focus, which is customer service. If you cannot execute on service, you're not going to get paid anyway. So you could have the best tech, but you can't deliver or you can't execute, then really what do you have? And so it's kind of an interesting dynamic that we live in today.
It sure is. And I'm sure you read the industry trades to keep up on what your competitors are doing. And I think what I feel good about, I talked about the Lamborghini and I see what we're doing and we're like leading, right? We're at the tip of everything these huge shops are doing and have teams of 30 people doing, like we're doing it as a small, nimble agency. So again, it comes down to having the right people at those positions and helping us lead clients.
So Gatesman, what's the ideal customer? What is it or a typical customer look like?
It varies. Like we'll do project work, but typically our clients range from an income standpoint. They usually fit a vertical, right? So B2B, higher ed, healthcare, finance, we've got experience and have shown that we drive business in those categories. So if they are defined within those categories, like we go, that's our ideal customer. So yeah, we'll take projects and other verticals and whatnot, but if we don't have experience, typically we won't chase something. Number one, I would say also looking at their business to make sure that they're a growing business and not a stagnant, or they're firing agencies every year. Like we won't deal with that.
Bad customers.
Exactly. And that's one thing we also pride ourselves on is the length of relationships that we have. Like I mentioned, Shop and Save is still with us. FedEx Ground, they've been with us like 12 or 13 years. Array Technologies, I think we're going on our 4th year. And in this business, people change agencies like every 2-3 years. New CMO comes in, I want my agency. We've been very good at circumventing that because we build relationships with the entire marketing team and we get to know problems from a business standpoint, not just, oh, let me go buy a cup of coffee. Like we truly take a business first approach. And yes, we're good at relationships. But at the end of the day, it's like, if you don't drive results for your clients, you're out because they're getting the pressure of needing to perform and deliver to their board, to their bosses. And if you don't make them look good, and if you're not helping them succeed, they're out, you're out. You got to find a new client. So yeah, at the end of the day, that's kind of the equation.
Well, I love that. The business first. I mean, relationships are very important in developing across like the company, but execution is, if you're not providing value to somebody, I saw on your site, I think average relationship is 7+ years for a customer. And I love customer service forward companies that execute. And it's like, that's a sign, like how long have you been with people? And I even add that one for prospects, like what's your average relationship? And it's like, well, we switch all the time.
When we pitch an account, like you see any brand on that website that we work with, let us know if you want to talk to them. Over the past, we just sent out our new client satisfaction survey. But over the past 2 years, we've received 100% satisfaction. Either they were very satisfied or satisfied. Nothing below that. I'm like, holy shit. That hopefully we'll keep getting that, but you're usually going to have somebody within the department on a client side not be happy. But again, I think it's having that anticipatory nature of knowing where things are going, staying in touch with their clients. What are their pain points? What's keeping them up at night? Getting to the point where they can counsel and they can ask you, what should I do? So yeah, those relationships. And believe me, we've survived a lot of CMOs that have left and continued on for years and years. So I think being able, like when that new guy comes in, and we just experienced this again, and he's hard charging and challenging, asking, why are we doing this? Why did you do it that way? But once you win him over, and then the other people on the team saying, these guys are good, give them a chance. That's gold because they see that you're going to help them succeed. And if they undo that and bring in another agency that is going to screw, I don't want to say the F word, but screw it all up, they're at risk. So I think to your point, like as long as it's business first, at the end of the day, that's what matters, right? The personalities may change, but as long as you truly care, they trust you that you do care, then yeah.
I often think too, you don't really have a business unless it's sustainable from person to person. And so like it's hard, like you always hear like, well, the owner did it this way, the owner like, and if an account rep or a sales rep changes, a lot of times like if customers change, you really don't have a business. So like, how do you create individuals that live the owner's same spirit, that entrepreneur, create that across the organization, and even that passion for customer service?
And it's hard. Not everybody wears it on their sleeve like I do, but internally they do. You see it. Like you can tell they're really upset if we don't win or do something. And, losses are hard because if we don't grow, we die. It's as simple as that. And you got to hustle. You got to wake up every day and you got to make it happen. When I look in the mirror every morning, it's like, let's go. And you have down days, but you got to go. And I feel like if we're not growing, you're just on this treadmill and you're eventually going to fall off. You got to keep going. And like I said, it's like a jungle gym. You got to keep striving to the top. And I don't think people sometimes realize as entrepreneurs that you're on 24/7. It does not go away. You don't go home at night and like, my day's done. Like, no, you're constantly thinking, you're constantly worrying, you're waking up at 3 a.m. with ideas and writing notes. I'm on my phone all the time, as much as my wife hates me doing it.
Loves it.
It's like we're out to dinner. Like, I've made it a point now, I will hide my phone. I won't look at it, but it's part of your, it's part of your DNA. It's like your baby. You just can't not think about it.
Yeah. If you're not addicted, I always tell people, if you are not addicted, it'll kill you. It'll drive you nuts. You won't stay in it, but because it eats at you constantly. And we have a lot of great people here that have been with us for a long time, and we sit in rooms and all we do is talk about freight. Like they came over to my house a couple weeks ago, and on a Sunday we were all just barbecuing and hanging out, and all we're doing is talking about freight. And I guarantee everybody's just staring at us like, God, shut up. But it's, I guess once it gets in your blood, it's just in your blood, and love it. So what's next for Gatesman? What's the future?
We're just going to continue persevering and growing. And to me, it's like, if we focus on our culture and being the best we can be, the growth will take care of itself. And it has, right? We don't want to be this mega agency. We occupy a nice space. I like the fact that we're fiercely independent. And I'm seeing these big global dying holding companies merging and laying off thousands of people. And you know what? We don't want to be there. We want to be able to control our own destiny, shift and move where we can quickly, because we can quickly, and just continue to grow and have fun and impact business. And the one thing I'll never forget, when I went client side, when you're in this business, you think, oh, this is their world too. Like, every day it's advertising and marketing, and advertising and marketing is like this much of our client's day. It's like, oh, I got to deal with my agency. Okay. So I remind people, when you have that little window of time dealing with your client, it better be the best damn 30 minutes of their day or their week. You better be on, you better be excited, you better be enthusiastic, you better be like thinking forward, anticipating questions, like you better have it. And I think that as long as we continue to keep that in mind and we continue to grow and hire the right people, success will take care of itself.
I met a guy who's really cool. He has a sales consultancy, a training company, Jeff Hoffman, and he was on the podcast earlier, and we're getting going, and he has this really cool saying. It's like, why you now? And the point of it is, like, as a sales rep, when you get a hold of a customer for that time, like, why should they give you that time? Because that value is like taking them away from something else. So you better be prepared. You better have great questions and do your homework and ready to go. And I've just always loved that, and I think it's valuable.
And that's a wrap for More Than a Broker. You heard firsthand accounts from industry experts and Spot's hardworking individuals, revealing a culture of collaboration and innovation. For more information about Spot, our service offerings, our people and culture, our job postings, and more, check us out online at spotinc.com. That is spotinc.com. Thank you for listening and for being part of this journey. Until next time, keep striving to be more than a broker.